In this lecture, we are going to see three iconic models of decision-making processes that could represent how decision makers are likely to take decisions on the basis of the features of the decision itself. Goal of this class is to understand that different models to take decisions are more effective on the basis of the characteristic of the specific situation. Let's start with the first one. The first model is called thinking first. This is the typical analytical and modeling method to take decisions. The problem setting and problem solving phases are almost equally important, and, as the name suggests, the problem is deeply investigated and analyzed before any kind of decision is taken. This approach aims at studying all the cause-effect links, as well as the purpose is to select as far as possible the optimal solution. In this approach, 5 phases of the process are recognized. Intelligence, to have a perception of the problem as well as to identify which are the main goals and constraints. Once goals and constraints are very clear, there is the design phase, where the system is identified, the possible alternatives are generated with the goal to be as exhaustive as possible and are then evaluated. In general, a sequential evaluation is used to easily eliminate those not consistent with the expectations and finally move into the choice phase by selecting the best alternative among the remaining one. When the decision is taken, it is time to move to the real implementation of the alternative through a detailed plan of the necessary steps in terms of activity, timing, roles, and way of operating. This plan is thus followed by the realization of each activity. The final stage is the review that aims at measuring the results achieved on the basis of the key performance indicators identified in the intelligence phase. These effects are compared with the expected goals to perform a gap analysis in case of mismatch. The thinking first approach is typical of complex and planned decisions, where several stakeholders are involved and the effect of the decisions is long-term oriented. Moreover, it is a typical approach adopted by medium-big companies and by public administration. The second model is called doing first. In this approach, all the focus is on the problem-solving phase rather than on the problem-setting one. As a matter of fact, this approach aims at directly implementing a solution in order to see which are the effects and, in case of a negative outcome, to change it. In this approach, the main keywords are incremental and iterative. In the doing first model, the first step is the action. With an experimental approach, decision makers implement an alternative without particular analysis or evaluation of the effects a priori. Then, the main results are evaluated to confirm or not the selected solutions. In fact, this phase is called selection. This is a typical trial and error approach, and the decision maker is implementing a series of solutions until the best one is found. A last phase is then necessary, called memory. To avoid the repeating of same solutions as well as some mistakes over time, it is important to freeze in the personal as well as in the company memory all the trials and the results achieved through each trial. The doing first approach is typical of uncertain environment where time is scarce and when the modeling of the reality would be either too complex or too time consuming, and so it is more convenient to directly move to practice. This approach could be also used when the marginal cost of taking the wrong decision is not too big. But most important issue, this model could be used just if decisions are reversible. As a matter of fact, this approach is very likely adopted in small and craftsman companies. Finally, the last model is called seeing first. In this case as well, the main focus is on the problem solving, but just one alternative is considered. As suggested by the name, in this approach the decision maker sees which is supposed to be the best alternative and start working hard to realize this inspiration. A key issue of this approach is that one person has a vision about the future results, and after the vision, the organization starts working to realize that. In this model, the first step is preparation. It is misleading to think that the seeing first approach is based on chance. To be able to have the illumination to solve a problem, an in-depth preparation is often necessary to have skills and competencies necessary to cope with the typical work program. This phase is generally starting much before a real problem occurs. When a problem raises or an opportunity appears, the second phase starts and is called incubation. The decision maker enters in contact with a situation that is providing hints and incentives to your mind. After a certain period of incubation, in a sometimes totally unexpected moment, the idea comes out. This moment takes the name of illumination. In an unconscious way, the decision maker finds an unexpected way to solve the rational problem. After the illumination, it's then important to verify the idea feasibility. This is a planning phase where the idea is evaluated, the activities are planned and scheduled, the required resources identified, and constraints considered. This approach is typically used in the entrepreneurial environment or in startup companies. Indeed, also big companies sometimes might need an entrepreneurial way of working, such as for very strategic projects or in some innovative functions, such as the research and development one.